Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships, healing from these relationships, and we're going to talk about healing and the fear mind today. Narcissistic relationships are chronic places of fear. From pretty early on, fear of getting it wrong, fear of rage, fear of disappointing them, fear of the relationship ending if you do even one thing wrong, fear that you are to blame. It makes sense because narcissistic relationships are so characterized by rage and an unpredictability. You don't always know what sets the narcissistic person off, and a small thing can result in them having a big blow up. If you don't go along, you may face the silent treatment, passive aggression, or abandonment, which can bring up more fear. There is also an existential fear raised by these relationships, a sense of, who am I without this relationship? Why can't I get it right? What is wrong with me? Ask anyone in or even out of a narcissistic relationship. A prevailing emotion in the relationship was either fear or anxiety. Unfortunately, this fear mind starts to bleed into other areas of your life because not only do narcissistic relationships fill you with fear, they also leave you feeling risk averse. You no longer trust yourself. You may even have an instinct to do something, and then you second guess yourself and you hold back. Fear of failing, fear of being made fun of for failing, fear of doing the wrong thing. When we view this from a trauma and parts model, some of that holding back is that part of you that is trying to protect you from failure, and then subsequently the anticipation of the narcissistic person's anger or mockery jumping in there, while the voices you hear within you, are you stupid? You're never going to be able to do that. Certainly they feel harmful. They're also simultaneously protective because yes, failure will be met with shame and more abuse or humiliation from the narcissistic person. Even when you are not doing something that has anything to do with the narcissistic person, their internalized voice, the fears you carry within you, generalize, and thus for years in school, work, and life, you may hold back and not try. Or in some cases, you may overdo it on the other side and take massive risks that could place you in harm's way. It's hard to find your middle of trusting yourself and making reasonable risks. Now, if you grew up with narcissistic parents, in many cases, this fear-based approach can mean that you don't take chances, you don't believe in yourself, and you approach things with a fear mind. And fear minds avoid. A fear mind struggles to make a decision. A fear mind assumes it will all go wrong and expects it to go wrong. A fear mind can be impulsive. And this fear mind can also spring up in adult narcissistic relationships too. So that leads to a big question that relates to healing. How would you respond if you were not afraid? Obviously in places other than the narcissistic relationship, because those are scary. It's okay to be cautious in the narcissistic relationship because yes, they will snap and bite and criticize. But what about everything else in your life, which is really what matters? What would you do there? How would or could you respond if you were not afraid? Because that is what healing is. The fear response that just bothers and gets so many people after and during narcissistic relationships can mean that you continue to live in what feel like trauma responses, a state of anxious arousal, hypervigilance, and that takes up a lot of bandwidth. You are still in protective mode, and protective mode can often mean that you hold back, which makes sense. Your sympathetic nervous system screams, no, 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 danger. Failure is possible ahead. Humiliation lurks around that corner. Abandonment is sure to come if you speak your mind. But what would you do if you were not fearful? Interestingly, I know that most folks would not throw caution to the wind, and you wouldn't become a big fearless rebel. When you are not afraid, you actually may be more deliberate. Weigh things out, but not just say, no, I can't, but rather, let me think on this and do a deeper dive into whether I want to do something and whether you believe you can do something, how it fits for you as a person with your goals. Your choices aren't rejected from a place of fear, nor are they impulsively engaged in, but they're thought through. As you heal, you become more curious. You wonder if something could be right for you. You actually think about your you, the essence of you. So now, you may decide to take the job, not because you're afraid that if you don't take this job, another won't come, not because that if you don't, then people will leave you or think you are a loser, but because the job is something that you are interested in. It's different to make a choice from that place. Or you may decide to not take the job, not because you think you will fail at it, but because it isn't a good fit. The pay isn't enough, or it's not compelling enough. Again, you are curious about it. You explore it and make your choice, not theirs. I am not saying that this is easy. And you can start this journey of curiosity by being curious about your fear, the origin of it, the reality of it, what you are really afraid of. Listen, folks, if you're going to be living in fear, then at least unpack it. For example, if you are afraid of abandonment, if you failed at something, first of all, not such a bad thing if the narcissistic person went away, but I know it's not that simple. But that abandonment wound is often primal for us. So be curious, where is that from? Perhaps you had a withholding narcissistic parent, or a narcissistic person who would disappear, or give you the silent treatment, or perhaps there was some other early loss. In the early to middle part of healing, fear is everywhere, but you have to pull the weed out from the very bottom roots, or it will come back. Individuation and healing mean getting yourself to this point of wondering how you would move through the world if you were not afraid, and then really do a deep dive into the reality and the not reality of your fears. The narcissistic person may make fun of you if you don't do well, for example. But so what? You know that their maneuver is to try to make themselves big, to leave you small, to fill their supply needs, and to dominate. They really aren't making fun of you. They're just trying to make themselves taller. But while it is happening, none of it feels good. However, even getting it out of the realm of fear into the realm of disgust is an important pivot. Healing from trauma in all its forms is about healing the fear mind, physiologically consoling ourselves, recognizing that the fear response keeps us safe, and then allowing ourselves to see how it all works. I'm going to ask it again. How would you move through the world if you weren't afraid of the narcissist? There is a lot of you that the world needs to see. Start with curiosity and see if you can slowly step back out of it. Take those fear glasses off and put a different pair on. Thanks again.